learning is paramount. So we're going to open it up this time for comments as it relates to, first of all, is there a preferred choice? And then we can discuss if some additional wordsmithing is needed. So can we have individuals just come on? And we usually do a poll, but I'm just going to write that information down. So if you could just kind of unmute your phone and just vote on one or two. And then
this is Ron. I wanted just to comment that Dr. Brim and Sheila re-listened to the session last time and really tried to catch all of the ideas, thoughts, suggestions when you reacted to that first statement. And I think they did a pretty good job of embedding all of that into that second statement. So one of the big questions is, did we miss anything as you read this? Does it resonate? Does it address the concerns or ideas or suggestions you had last time?
Well, I'll start. My first reaction was I like the first one better because of the brevity of it. And it's just succinct and to the point, fewer words, seemed easier to understand on the face of it. I look closer at the second, and I like the fact that it's more specific and some of those great concepts are specifically outlined there. So I know that doesn't really help, but if you ask what I thought, that's what it is.
You have a half a vote for one and a half a vote for two.
This is Kalila. When I put my parent hat on and I'm looking at statement 1 and statement 2, statement 1 is a lot easier to read and digest real quick. When I put my district hat on, I can see where number 2 really flows well. But if we're thinking families and parents, then I would say number 1, because it's just easier for them to digest and understand.
This is Angela, and I agree with both of the ladies so far. I really do like number 1 because it is shorter and it's concise, but I also would love it if we could potentially fit in the word equitable into the first number 1 somehow.
okay.
Hi, this is Natasha. I agree with everything that was already said. And I also want to note that the first one also aligns really well with the district's vision. And that's what I really like about it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I mean, this is Amy. Hi. So I think we're kind of going back to, this is where we started and now we're kind of relooking at it going, we like the broader range, but maybe that could be a vision versus a mission statement. I mean, I don't want to jumble things up too much, but we could have a broader scope and then something more narrow underneath. Is that just an idea?
That's a great idea.
Is that, you're saying use the number 1 as the broader statement as the vision? Got it. Okay.
Number 2 as the mission?
Or tweak it so it could be a mission.
Okay.
Those are great. That's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
I am done.
Dr. Brim, I'll add a couple of thoughts. This is Dr. Evans. First of all, I like either one, and if we're looking for consensus, I could support either one. I think number 2 could be edited down if the length is the problem. I see a couple words that probably could come out. Collective partnership, the word collective is probably necessary through a partnership. You may not need strategies and practices. One of those words probably could come out. So you could probably shorten it. Or you could take the first part of number 2. If we like 100% student success, for Natasha's point and others, that it's tied to our district's vision, it could say Pinellas County Schools engage educators, families, community partner members through a collective partnership to ensure 100% student success. So you can take the beginning of number 2 and just finish it off with number 1. But I could support any of them. I like them both.
Okay. So thank you for all of that feedback. And so I do think I have enough notes to basically go ahead and finalize a vision statement. And I do like Amy's thought of just drafting something that could be like a mission. So that would include some of the detailed pieces of this work. And so our next meeting, our final meeting, I will have that final statement completed, but I will send it out prior to our meeting. So thank you very much for that feedback. So the next slide, please. Okay, so reading recovery project. And I want you to kind of basically recall our last meeting, we talked about, we met with all of the reading recovery teachers, the reading recovery lead teachers, and we met also with the principals. And it was at those principals meetings that we realized from their feedback at this point, part of their deliverable was to begin to draft their engagement team. But they thought because of where they are at this point in the year, it was just too much to bear to add an additional point or an additional duty deliverable to their task. So we stepped back and looked at our robust timeline to say, okay, with that in consideration, what we will do is that we will try to continue to move forward with possibly during the summer, doing some of our reading recovery training with our reading recovery teachers, which is 23 teachers, and also our lead teachers, as well as developing some of those reading recovery training Powtoon videos for our families. And so the additional piece that we decided to work on is previously we met as with some of the additional key leaders in our district. So what we decided is that we'll divide those key leaders that are not participating on our subcommittee discussions or to actually fill them in via a brief Zoom meeting or a brief phone call as to where we are. But I think as far as this process has been going on, we have made some really headway into establishing engagement in those 14 sites that we can use as models and that we can measure and monitor before we just scale out across the district. So basically, we're taking a slower walk throughout the remainder of this year, and we're going to return to that robust schedule the last part of July, moving forward into the new year. Are there any questions on what I just discussed? One of the things that I'm going to turn it over to Ron is that we talked about as a district engagement, we don't want to always be in a discussion type role, but a participatory role, but not really adding to your plate. So we're going to be moving into how do we develop this training, your comments that are important, and what possible role can you play in the delivery of the training. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ron. And Ron, you could start that discussion.
If you remember our session last time, one of the things we did was Sheila asked for volunteers. And so we have a list of the folks we're going to reach out to after today. And I don't know if we said this, but Sheila had a death in her family, so she couldn't be here today. And one of the things we talked about getting your feedback on that would be so helpful is about the training we have to provide for the 26 reading recovery teachers who are part of this project and those teacher leads. If you recall the training that we did with this group, there are really 3 things that we want those reading recovery teachers to do with or in partnership with families. So come this fall, in those targeted schools, we want the reading recovery teachers to reach out and make positive personal connections with every family. We want them to do a virtual home visit with those families. So that's one thing that we have to prepare them for, how to do that effectively. The second thing is we want them beyond that positive conversation. So these aren't things they would do at the same time. Once they have that relationship, that connection made, we want them to really help families clearly understand where their child is performing against the standards. We've talked about this before. So sharing information with families so it's not just, oh, my child has made growth, but really understanding, is my child at above or below grade level? And if they're in reading recovery, they're likely fairly far below grade level, really understanding where their child is to create that sense of urgency on the part of families. And then the third thing is the culminating activity is that they will design and host a training for families where they're teaching families, they're modeling a skill families can do at home. It's what their child's learning, giving families a chance to practice that skill and providing them with feedback. So we have the opportunity, we have the challenge of preparing these 26 reading recovery teachers to pull all of this off. And in conversation, as Dr. Brim said, we get a little of their time. We can have a little of their time this summer. If there are hours available, we can have time with them right before the beginning of the school year or at the beginning of the school year. And we need to create a training experience for them that brings them to mastery on these three things and ensures that they will do them all well. And that all of them will do it and they will do them superbly well. And so we would really like your thoughts today on how do we facilitate this training so that we're not asking them to participate in 90 hours of training, that we make the best use of their time, but at the end of it, they really do feel competent and confident to do all three of these things. So as we've been talking prior to today's meeting, we're thinking it might be a combination of creating some recorded materials that folks might listen to, having them come to a work session, or to providing some coaching and support as they do it. But we want to design an experience, and we want to have you guys share with us how you've done this for your teams, how you've been part of training. What would a training look like? What should we do? And remember, we'll be reaching out to some of you because you volunteered to help lead this effort with us. What should this training look like? How do we bring the folks to mastery on those three topics? And I just want to open that up and get your ideas so we can begin this planning process. So the first question is, does that request from me to you make sense? You understand the ask? And now, what's the solution? How do we not, I think all the time about, we could, sure, we do 80 hours of training, we'll get them ready to go, but we can't do that. So what can we do?
If I can add, Ron, say for an example, personal connections with every family. All of you are involved in family engagement work. And if you don't necessarily have how this should look in a training component, you at least will have some ideas how you've done that in the past and it was very successful. So if you not only want to share a strategy and share how that looks within a training, that will also be helpful.
Jennifer, I saw your eyes nod. You said, yes, I understand the ask. I'm wondering what was going through your head. How do we bring teachers to mastery on this so that they can design and lead an event that families participate in because they've got that strong connection and they understand that their child is having some challenges academically? What were you thinking?
That's unfair because I was nodding that I understood the ask.
You were brave enough to have your camera on and I could see your face.
I realized what a big question that is. And it's a challenging answer. So I think that's why my eyes got big, like, ooh, yeah, this is a lot. So I don't have a great answer for you, but I'm going to think about it.
And as Dr. Brim was saying, the content, we're pretty sure what the content of it needs to be. What we're really grappling with is how do we maximize their learning and their confidence and minimize the amount of time that they have to spend doing all of this. And I see Dr. Evans, you turn on your camera. I hope that's in anticipation of sharing your wise thoughts about what we could do. Oh, Nancy has raised her hand. Nancy,
I was turning my camera on to be nice, and
okay.
I'll comment in a minute, but let's have Nancy go.
Okay.
We're always happy to see your face, Dan. I was going to suggest part of the complaints about some trainings is that they are not specific enough in what they absolutely are expected, what is expected, instead of speaking in sometimes vagaries, and sometimes we get very lost in our education, our edu-speak, and we don't get specific. The other thing I believe teachers respect in a training is to ask what they are already doing and how that can work into what we would like to see, because many teachers are already doing pieces of this,
right,
and they may not be doing it totally. So then you have something that you can, sculpt and mold into what the end goal is. So I do think that having them participate in what they are doing will make them feel much more engaged, and that it's their project as well.
Nancy, do you think, as you were talking, I'm wondering, because I think of you all the time when I think about this project, because we said to you at the beginning, one of the reasons we're thrilled you're here is to help us ensure we use teachers' time well, and that it's for a good purpose, and how to do that. Would it make sense to ask some of those questions virtually, do an email, some sort of a poll or something, gather that as we do the design, so we can incorporate that in? Do you have any good ways of doing that?
That might be a good idea, to try to get some of their feedback ahead of time, so that the training can work around that. I do know that I've got all of my best ideas as a teacher came from other teachers.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's just where they came from most of the time. Not to say that I never got anything out of training. I did, but most of my sources were other teachers. Dan was one of my early trainers when I was beginning it in this county, and at the time he was my colleague, and I do believe that they have a lot to offer, and if they're excited about this project, they will help shape it for you.
That's awesome feedback. Let me ask Nancy, on the same lines of you having the pulse of teachers, how do you feel about, or how do you think they feel about, because I know consuming their time is very important, but the more opportunities they can view training in a virtual platform or recording at their leisure, do you think that is more preferred than trying to attempt live and face-to-face?
I do believe that that might help. Yes, that might help as far as conserving their time. I think if you're going to ask them ahead of time, that is probably one of the main questions and first questions you'd want to ask, their preference for the platform. I know many people do like face-to-face interactions, but it is hard. That's harder to fit into your schedule. So I see what you're saying. I would say that's an important question to start with.
One of the things we had in mind was to try to get them some of the information, the training in advance that they could do at their own time. And that we brought them together would really be a co-planning session where, given the information you have, let's design this together. What will this look like? How can we help you? So that the face-to-face time, which will be in a virtual setting like this, would be about applying the knowledge they have and trying to be respectful of their time. And I love that hadn't thought of it, asking them, we could ask them, would you like virtual, would you like that setup? Is that the preferred platform, or would you like something else? So great idea. Fantastic.
And thank you all. I was not at the last meeting. There was some crisis or other happening at the time. I mean, I can't keep track of all the crises. They just come too fast. So, but I do really appreciate that you are considering slowing the roll and letting this year, you know, yes, we can start with the trainings and the talk and the discussion, but that's something I was going to suggest and never got the opportunity to. So I really do appreciate that. And I'm sure your teachers do as well. Thank you very much for that, Valerie.
Oh, you're welcome. That was driven by principals.
Oh, yes, and I guess they are seeing
Yes,
it. Yep. Thanks, though.
thank you.
So Dr. Evans, what are you thinking besides you wish you were at a baseball game?
I think all of it sounds great. I think maybe we're making a couple assumptions that I would give us caution around. I don't know whether it's part and parcel to the reading recovery teachers training already. Like they have a unique training that they do to engage with families. And we probably should know what they're learning about. Remember, I think we talked last time, the reading recovery teachers, kind of like a tutor teacher. It's not the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher is another teacher on top of the reading recovery teacher. So I don't know which teacher we're talking about, but either one, if we're talking about the reading recovery teacher, they have specialized training. And I don't know whether family engagement and conversing with the family is part and parcel to that training already.
Okay, so I can respond to that, Dr. Evans. And that was one of the main reasons why Mr. Hendrick volunteered the reading recovery, because there is a very small piece of connecting to families, and that is the student reading with the family at night. Yes, some of the teachers conversate, but when you began to talk about how we want to take this opportunity to make sure it extends beyond the reading recovery initiative, even if they have additional students in our school, to be able to get the full robust understanding from our district perspective of making sure they have tools and resources to support their child, making sure they understand how they could communicate and connect to their child's teacher, making sure that the engagement are linked to learning. So all that those pieces, in addition to building those relationships, I think it's a little more robust than what was initially in the reading recovery program.
I actually have a specific question for you, Dr. Evans, about this second piece, this data piece. And in my mind, as I think about, since I spend so much time trying to facilitate training opportunities for folks, one of the things that I have certainly seen be useful is being able to watch a video of something to see an example. And I'm wondering if you all thought, if some of us might model a video, create a video and model a conversation of having that, model an example of having that conversation with the family. What does that look like? How does that go to share that information on where your child is performing? And I know many of you volunteered to be part of this process. Do you think a creation of a video like that was part of that work they do ahead of time, or look at ahead of time, looking at an example of what we're suggesting would be useful? And is that something you think we as a group could pull off?
Were you asking me that, Ron?
Yes, and everyone else. I mean, because I could see, you know, having someone like you model that data conversation with a parent in a little video that we could have as an example. Ms. Hansen, I had her hand up there. I don't know if she's talking to us or.
Ms. Hansen?
So I have an out-the-box thinking idea that I'm not sure if it would work, but I figure I would share it. So when you talk about families, and especially that number 2, where it says, is my child at, above, or below grade level? And we're saying that we want these teachers to be able to master some of these pieces when they're working with families. Would it be possible to have a few families as what I would call testers? Dr. Brim has a few programs that works under her in the afternoons. If we get just let's say 1 or 2 parents, and when we bring the teachers together for training, if these 2 parents can be there, because if they're not linked to the district, in other words, they're not working in our district, our terminology, the way we say things to each other will be a lot different than what they hear and understand. So in those trainings, if the parent has a blank look on their face, then the teachers know, okay, we need to go back to the drawing board and adjust that. And I'm thinking of my own self before I came to the district, hearing the lingo and now hearing it now. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm good now. I can talk this. But prior to that, I was like, what are they saying? So I don't know if it's a possibility, but that was just my out the box thinking. If you really want to zone in to reach these parents and get them to better understand what that statement really means.
I love your suggestion of having parents co-lead the training. I think that's a great idea. What would you think about just pushing that idea farther? You think 1 or 2 of those parents might participate in a example video where, you know, we could model that conversation as part of the teacher's training prior to the in-person event?
I would see them doing that. Once, from my experience, when I worked under Dr. Brim with the parents, once you build that relationship with them, they are willing to help. They're willing to just assist in the ways that they can when it comes to that kind of things. And I can't see a parent saying no to a teacher or someone in Dr. Brim's department that have already built that rapport with them.
Great.
I agree. I think that's an excellent idea. And not only that, but even getting their input as we build this training from a parent perspective. So I think that is awesome.
Lucy, I don't know if you made it into the room when we set up the request. Are you clear about what we're asking about? I know I let you in at some point, but I can't remember when it was.
Yeah, I'm sorry for being late. I think I have a grasp on what you were asking, but I would benefit from clarification if you could restate the question.
So our next step is to design the training and support experience for the reading recovery teachers in those pilot buildings. Mm-hmm. And we have the opportunity to get a little time with them this summer and early in the fall. And we're trying, our request is, how do we design a training and support experience for these 26 teachers so that they have the confidence and competence to do these 3 things with families, that they can reach out and do, for example, a virtual home visit and feel good about that and prepared and excited about that, that they can have that conversation with families to really help them understand where their child's performing, and that they can then design and lead an event, because this is the culminating piece in the fall, in the early fall, where they model a skill for families and facilitate families practicing that skill so they can apply that skill at home to support their child's literacy. So how do we create a learning experience? We were talking about, again, I'm not sure how much you heard, but doing some, Nancy had some great ideas about asking in advance what sort of platform, might be doing some recorded things in advance they watch, and then we have a live planning session together. Ms. Hansen talked about having some parents be part of leading that process. But how do we at the end of the day have the 23, 26 reading recovery teachers say, yes, I know what to do and I can do this and it's going to go well?
Well, I would say, personally speaking, when I was coached in reading to teach reading in 2nd grade, I had a co-teacher come in, and basically we had a video camera set up. So we would, you know, she would brief me on what to do. So I think it would be real helpful if we came across some type of script that we can give them until they get up on their own feet and own the process. So not something they have to do, but something that is there if they're just like searching for the vocabulary, and then keeping in mind again that they're going to be talking to parents. So to tone down any kind of academic jargon that might not come across as being important. So having maybe even a focus group of parents who are, you know, from the community of these students, and, you know, at not, you know, your typical maybe parent who's always there at the school, but maybe trying to get a focus group of parents who are shyer about, you know, showing up at school because they're probably the parents of these students who are not for whatever reason, as present in the school community. So asking them also, when I think it was Miss Hanson was saying about that look on your face, where you understand or if you go blank. So maybe going through having somebody maybe do a fishbowl in front of these parents and then stopping and saying to the parents, like, what did you understand? What made sense? What didn't?
Oh, I love, yeah.
And then, continuing to do that. So working out some type of script, some type of process, some type of procedure for the teachers that would give them that support, which would be more practical instead of the theory, that we don't have the time for. Like, we're already teaching, we already know the importance of this. So just let's get to the practical steps, and then do like a fishbowl where, you get the feedback from the families who are not, privy to all this jargon, and then tone down the vocabulary, and videotape as much as you can, so that when you have, because I know it was beneficial for me that when I did it, you have to practice something so many times to be proficient at it. And so when I did it the first time, it's not like I'm going to remember what to do exactly the second time, because my amygdala is being hijacked in that moment with this newness and, the unknown. So I'm not really fully present. So videotape that so that I can then go back and say, oh my gosh, sometimes I would watch the video and say, oh my God, that was me. I actually was speaking that. I was actually doing that, because I wasn't really present in the moment that I was doing it.
So you're saying videotape the training.
Videotape whatever's going to be relevant to support the teachers, and in brief segments so that they can see, not like one whole 2-hour kind of thing, but, break it down. This is when you do, this is what a personal connection might look like. This is when you talk about grade level. This is when you talk about what to do at home.
So those are fantastic suggestions. I love that fishbowl idea.
Yes.
I have another question for you related. So let me ask this. I love bringing the videotape into the practice and the learning piece. We know that everybody learns, students learn, and certainly in instructional coaching, teachers learn as they are coached. What about bringing some of this into the actual doing? So if I'm a reading recovery teacher and I've got 5 or 6 kids I'm working with, would you see any value in videoing or providing some coaching support as they're doing it with the families?
Absolutely. I mean, when I was doing it, I was practicing live with, human beings, and my coach was on my side. And, anytime I needed like support, I would look at her. She would tell me what to do or what was next, and I would do it. So it was very practical for me. I felt like learning by doing is a quicker way of learning than sitting and getting. So I'm actively doing the work.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'm going to take about 2 more minutes to finish this conversation. Any other suggestions for us as we, I saw Amy's hand went up.
So I was just thinking, like, just from my own experience too, but I'm finishing up some classes as a student, and what's really been beneficial as an adult learner is really just having a group within a group. So having like a team within the class. So teachers supporting teachers. So if there is a session, there could be a follow-up, like with like a post teamwork where they could kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And if we have different schools, sometimes it's nice to break the barriers of the school, like we're always sometimes working with, I go to this school, this is where I'm only going to work with these teachers. But so many great things are going on at different schools, and we learn from different ways. So maybe we could kind of blend groups or, virtually. Just a thought as far as like when, once you hear all this information, it's like, gosh, sometimes it's nice to have that decompression time to really, this is what I just heard. And did you all just hear that? Is that what I just heard? Really having that support system with providing that opportunity would be helpful. If it were me, I would want to know it wasn't just Amy on her own and, the higher ups.
As you were saying that, one thing that popped into my mind was, again, once they start the process, they're out having these conversations with families, that might be a really great time to facilitate some small group conversation about how's it going, what's working, what's making me crazy, what am I struggling with, what any ideas for making this go better? Is that?
Yes, but I'll tell you what, I won't say that in front of my professor, but I'll say it with my classmates sometimes before, you know, it's
great. So
having
safe
that
place
time.
is great.
If you carve out the time, they might want to, you know, use it, or if there's a task associated with the carving out of that time, then I think that's beneficial, because that's where the really rich conversations that I've had with my classes have really come from, just that communicating with my peers.
And the most important thing, I think, to keep it, not the most, an important thing to keep in mind is, remember, this is the pilot and we are trying to learn lessons from what it takes to prepare these teachers to be successful, to scale and take, you know, broader, what is it, how do we create those conditions? Dr. Closey, I'm going to ask you to maybe chime in with maybe could be the last comment. From a technology standpoint, are there things in technology that the district has or we might use that might make this process, this learning experience for these this group of reading recovery teachers more successful?
Well, if we're absolutely, especially if we're going to be utilizing a virtual platform, and I think we should ask up front a couple things, thoughts I've been thinking as we've been talking. You know, I wouldn't give them too much front-loaded homework coming into it because people feel stressed by that. You know, you got some goody two-shoes that will do it. Because then you have some people that will not do it. And so I would keep the pre-work to a minimum, but I really appreciated Ms. Velarde's definitely tapping into what they already know and what they're doing. And there's nothing worse than coming into, in my opinion, it's happened to me, training where they assume that I don't know any of this stuff. And like, I just fell off the boat yesterday. And so these are, you know, they're caring teachers who are doing some things. And so, you know, really valuing what they already know. And I would really want to keep this till, I would think, 3 hours maximum would be my thinking on the timing of it, with maybe cut-ups later. But there are things within the virtual platform where we can garner activities or garner feedback from them to collect that information. So when we, you know, in a similar way, if we were in a real training, we might do, you know, well, not a parking lot thing, but, you know, kind of a gallery walk where people put their ideas on stickies. Well, we can do a digital version of that to gather their feedback and their input.
We have about a minute or so here. I don't know if you saw Dr. Colosi, how Dr. Evans was so supportive and made a lovely comment for you out there in the chat box.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah.
Any other, these are fantastic ideas. They just have my mind racing, and I can't wait for Sheila to get back and get moving on this. And I know that, Dr. Close, you were one of those ones who volunteered. So we'll be chatting about that virtual parking lot, among other things. Any other final comments about what we should consider as we develop this training and learning experience that is meant to enhance the capacity of these teachers?
Ron and team, I think I have to say something that I think will fit into Hillary's part on the agenda. I'm going to remind the team that I mentioned a couple meetings ago that at one point we did a video with a vendor product, and we piloted a couple years ago, and it was a parent video about how to understand where your kid is as it relates to their reading and math ability. And could we make the video in such a way that would resonate with parents and not talk over their heads and some of the stuff we've heard on the call today?
Yes.
And what we found was the staff people here thought that we had to, I'm going to use the word, dumb down the video for parents to consume it. And when we put it out to parents, we found that wasn't the case. It was our own deficit thinking that thought that parents couldn't handle the information we were giving them. So there's a couple ways I think deficit thinking could creep into this work. One, if we scale down the information to make it so simple for parents because parents can't handle it, I think might be a deficit thinking concern. And the other thing is we have to be very careful, because we're talking about reading recovery, not to characterize these children and their parents in deficit.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Those are powerful statements.
Yeah.
Well, that, Dr. Evans, is a fantastic lead in to our next slide.
Yes, I was thinking
is going to talk about, and as always, if something occurs to you after today, just reach out to Dr. Rimmer, to Sheila, and say, another idea, another thought I had is, because we really want this experience to be something that's meaningful for the teachers and something that is replicable, that we can take out and maximize teacher feelings of confidence with as little input as possible, with this trying to be efficient in this and respectful of what they know, but also giving them enough support so that they can do this and do this well. So Dr. Brim.
Thank you so much for all of that input, but what Dan just stated, it does segue into part of our work is looking at equity for family, equitable practices when we address family engagement with our parents and our community. And when we think about that, Dr. Greco always talk about equitable practices, or equity always mean access and opportunity. What does that look like for our families? Diverse ways of communication. That's another key piece. Consideration of economics, diversity, language, and ethnicity. When we're dealing with our families, we just can't send out a one-all type format without considering all of these components. Understanding disenfranchising. Why are our families just actively disengaging from our district? And how does that equitable work bring them back into an active engagement piece? Different modes of training, what we just decided and talked about. How do we diversify our training so it meets the needs of all of our families? And then diversify ways of building relationship. How you might build your relationship with me might be very different from building the relationship with Mrs. Kane or with Ron. So we have to consider all of that consider all of those pieces. So we have invited Hillary to speak about if anyone on our group would consider, if you're not already, and becoming an equitable champion. So at this time, Hillary, if you want to take over and begin to talk about those pieces.
And Hillary, this is Ron. We have never met. I don't work in the district. I'm a consultant. But as I was creating this slide and I Googled you, I noticed that you are a fellow Boilermaker. So I am also a Purdue grad. Go Boilers.
Go Boilers. I'm also sort of a bull now because I have my master's degree from USF and working on my doctorate at USF as well. So not going to take up too much of your time today, but again, I'm Hillary Van Dyke, my position has changed. What am I? The PD specialist for equity. And the equity team has been growing over the last 4 years for the district. And one of the main things that we have been doing since the beginning is an equity cohort, which is a 12-hour training that first started with Dr. Mary Connage and has gone through some revision since then. It's inspired by the Lastinger Center's Leading for Equity certificate, as well as Glenn Singleton's Courageous Conversations About Race book, and as well as helping educators see how they can fit into the Bridging the Gap's 6 goals. But we dig into thinking about ourselves and maybe some blind spots we might have and how we can do better by our students, but also just thinking about the work that you're doing and the families that it might be impacting. We thought maybe this would be a good group of people who should consider participating in the equity cohort. Since Lucy's actually part of your committee, I did want to also give her the space to say a couple things about why she thinks it would be a good idea for committee members to consider participating in the equity training as well. So I'm gonna let Lucy talk, but you'll receive an email. I'm gonna send Dr. Brim an email that will give you the dates for this summer's signups. So hopefully you consider participating. And then as part of your work with the family and community engagement, committee, we will just call that your Equity Champion Project. So you'll sort of just automatically become an Equity Champion after completing the training. But Lucy, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to, I was talking to Hillary about the work that the committee is doing and how sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And by participating in the Equity Champion cohort and being part of the, the Equity Champion community, you become more, I want to say, practice in talking about equity, about learning about what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, what expectations are. You get more, you build confidence in having these conversations that, sometimes are uncomfortable, but by going through it as a cohort, you also build that team. So it's a great team building opportunity if everybody, on this committee goes through it together. Because there's a lot of learning to be done about our district, how our district may, be pushing parents out, pushing students away, what we can do to, reverse any kind of negative trends for our family. And again, like I said, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And the cohort's a great opportunity to come together to get some new knowledge about practices towards equity, what our goals are, bridging the gap, and the needs of our students and our families. And then, having just that knowledge and, being able to say I'm an equity champion connects you with a whole network of people who are working for the same cause. So I think we should do it.
And I want to add a piece as a additional work from our district. We are partnering with some community partners to build a cohort of families that have students that are entering into our kindergarten program, as well as students that already exist. And we want to begin to have those courageous conversations. And I think that particular advisory board or that council is another means of bringing them to the table to help us understand or help us how we deliver these equitable practices to our families, and including their input. So I think this is a powerful work for the extension, not only of our recovery families, recovery initiative families, but our families across the board. So I strongly would like to encourage you, if you have not done so, please do so. I think this is going to be huge for our work. Ron, you have any more comments on that?
I was just going to ask if anyone had any questions for Hillary about.
I did want to say, sorry, that Ron, you can also participate as a community observer if you would like to as well.
Fantastic. Other questions, comments? Has anybody in here already completed this process? Lucy's a champion. Anybody else a champion already? Oh, Dr. Colosi is fantastic. It would be great if we could get.
For Hillary.
Oh, please.
So Hillary, I did start the classes, but I did not do my the PowerPoint presentation. So is it too late to do it? That way I can become an equity champion?
Yeah, just send me an email and we can connect offline and talk about that.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions for Hillary or for Lucy? So as we are nearing the end of the time today, just wanted to talk to you about what next steps will be. Sheila returns to the district on Friday. She and Dr. Brim and I will sit down and we'll digest all of your suggestions, and we're going to start developing the training and support experience for teachers. And we will be reaching out to all of those of you last time who said, yes, I will help with this process. We have your names. You're never getting off our list. And we have one final meeting this spring that will be next month. And we hope to really bring you up to speed on what this training will be and what everyone's role is. Are there any other things you want to share with us or questions you want us to consider before our next session?
I just want to say Ms. Hanson has asked to be part of the developed training, individuals that support the training development.
Wonderful. We'll take all the help we can get. We love partners.
That's it.
Great. Well, Dr. Brim, would you like
Okay.
to give us
Oh,
some
no.
final words of wisdom?
Well, I do want to say in our last meeting, we would like to do a poll to get your feedback on the district engagement team, what we've been doing this year, what things do we need to do differently. So keep in mind, we will be adding like a survey to gather your feedback, but we're hoping that, as always, moving from discussion to action steps. And I think something's wonderful about this committee. That's exactly what we're doing. And connecting it to connecting it to different components of our district and others' work. So with that being said, I'm done, Ron. I don't have anything else to say.
I actually have one question. I see Dr. Evans, I can see your face there. That video you mentioned that you created, the user video, is that something you could send us a link to that we could look and see what, kind of maybe watch and learn?
Let me say that I'll look for it. It was a proprietary thing, and I don't know that I have that link anymore.
Okay, but if you find it, that would be great. It would help.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. It was an interesting project, and it's aligned to what you're trying to do. And I think it's a great direction.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments before we go for today? Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Get prepared. You know, we promised we would reach out. We'll be reaching out for some help in co-designing and co-leading this upcoming training. So have a great rest of your week and see you all next month.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Angela.
Thanks, Tracy. Thank you, Kiosha, for being the glue that held us together today.
No problem.
I thought they had some really great ideas.
Did too. I think they really kind of built our training, really, with all of that input. That was awesome. Whew, I'm so glad Ms. Kane will be back next month.
And Ms. Kiosha, I was supposed to tell you at the very beginning, make sure to record, and about halfway through, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, so thank you for being so on the ball.
No problem. I didn't get the initial introduction, but then the light bulb did go off in my brain to hit record.
It took me a while. I thought, oh, Sheila's going to shoot me because I told her I would remind you. It's like, I didn't do it.
Don't worry.
Amy, I loved your suggestions.
Me too. That was awesome. Yeah.
Ron, is that your PowerPoint or is that Dr. Brim's?
She has a copy. I made it yesterday.
Oh, can you send that to me, Dr. Brim? Because I'm doing a parent meeting soon, and I love that first slide. I think that's a great.
Oh, yeah, those quotes. I was looking for those yesterday, trying to think of what might inspire us. And I agree with you. I like that Henry Ford quote, Dr. Brim, because that's really what we're trying to do.
But I just love the fact, like even the Helen Kelly, like how it's just all, you know, people are so different, but the message for people is so the same, you know, just working together. And I love that. Thank you so much.
I just sent it to you.
I got it.
Send an invite for Friday.
Yes, we're just going to, so I'll recap, kind of put together these notes. I'm so glad, Ms. Simmons, you recorded the chunk of it, because Ms. Kane will watch. And she'll look at my notes and say, what is she talking about?
I have got to say, I was
no, she's gonna say, what is, she'll say, what is she talking about? What is she talking about? I wasn't there.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, great. Well, thank you all very much.
Well, thank you, Ron.
See you Friday, Dr. Brim. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
And Joshua, why are you in Sheila's house? I don't understand that.
It's a background.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.